"You can move your truck, Owen. This is the new driveway now." Grant Whitmore said it while a concrete pump pushed wet gray concrete across the strip between our properties. Behind him, 3 workers pulled the material toward a curved retaining wall that had not existed when I left for a medical appointment that morning. One of the orange warning stakes my surveyor had placed beside the proposed line lay broken near the street. A new catch basin sat in the drainage swale that carried stormwater past my workshop. My wife, Naomi, stepped out of our pickup and stared at the pump hose crossing our grass. "Who authorized work on our parcel?" she asked. Grant tapped a rolled construction plan against his leg. "My driveway permit is approved." The contractor verified the location. I pointed to the red paint curving from his old driveway onto our side yard. "That paint does not establish a boundary." Grant smiled behind dark sunglasses. "You had your chance to sell the strip. You said no. That does not mean you get to hold up a permitted project forever." The concrete was already more than halfway down. I did not stand in front of the pump. I did not touch the workers or damage the forms. I took out my phone and recorded the truck, the crew, the county permit card, the broken warning stake, and the concrete crossing the drainage swale. Then I asked Grant one question. "Are you saying on camera that every part of this driveway is on land you own?" He looked directly into the lens. "I am saying the property issue has been handled." It had not. Before that concrete truck arrived, Grant had received a written refusal, a lawyer's notice, a county warning, and an email telling him to wait for a licensed boundary survey. He poured anyway. 3 weeks later, Grant's house was under contract for $1.149 million. The buyers had their closing appointment scheduled. The appraisal praised the widened garage approach and motor court. Grant expected the transaction to fund on Monday. Then the title underwriter reviewed one certified survey. The boundary line passed through the driveway, the retaining wall, and the new drainage system. The title company would not insure the access as represented. The lender suspended funding. The buyers walked away. Grant had poured the driveway to make his house easier to sell. The driveway became the reason it could not close. My name is Owen Barrett. I was 54 when Grant bought the house next door. Naomi and I had lived on our property for 21 years. We bought it when our children were young because it had a large backyard, a detached workshop, and enough space for a garden without placing us far from town. The house was not historic. My family had not owned the land for generations. I did not work for the county, and I was not a surveyor. I was a facilities manager for a community college. My job involved roofs, boilers, maintenance schedules, contractors, and repair budgets. It taught me one useful habit. When work involves a legal boundary or a professional license, call the person qualified to answer the question. The disputed strip ran along the east side of our property, between the workshop and Grant's lot. It was about 11 feet wide near the road and narrowed slightly toward the back. 2 mature maple trees stood along the grass edge. A shallow drainage swale carried runoff away from the workshop foundation toward a public ditch. The strip did not look valuable from the street. That did not make it unused. Our utility company used part of it to reach the electric meter on the workshop. Naomi pushed a garden cart through it. I moved lumber and equipment along it when the main driveway was blocked. Most importantly, the swale kept heavy rain from collecting against the workshop slab. Grant bought the neighboring property after a foreclosure. The renovation changed the rhythm of the street almost immediately. Dumpsters arrived before sunrise. Delivery trucks blocked half the road. Crews removed trees, widened the front walk, and replaced the old one-car garage with a structure almost as wide as the original house. Grant did not live there during the work. He visited in the mornings, met subcontractors, and left before most of the noise began. When neighbors complained about vehicles or debris, he described the inconvenience as temporary investment in the area. That phrase worked on some people. Several houses on our block had not been updated in years. Owners liked hearing that a high sale price might raise comparable values. Grant understood that. He talked about the project as though every design choice improved the entire neighborhood. The new garage became the center of his marketing plan. He added glass-paneled doors, built-in storage, electric vehicle wiring, and a polished floor. A rendering on his renovation website showed 2 SUVs turning easily through a broad, curved drive. The rendering also showed part of our side yard. I noticed it before the forms appeared. When I asked Grant about the image, he said renderings were conceptual and not meant to define property. That answer became important later. When the rendering helped sell the house, he treated it as accurate. When it crossed our boundary, he called it conceptual. Naomi kept a dated folder of project photographs after that conversation. Every few days, she stood at the same point near the street and photographed the property line, the grass strip, the swale, and the changing work next door. She was not building a legal case at the time. She wanted a record in case construction damaged the maple roots or blocked drainage. Those photographs later showed that no driveway had existed on the disputed strip before Grant's renovation. The old neighboring drive stayed entirely east of the line. Grass covered our parcel. The swale remained open. There were no tire marks, gravel base, retaining walls, drainage structures, or signs of historic shared access. That visual history mattered when Grant's attorney later used the phrase prescriptive easement. A prescriptive right requires more than a new owner deciding a route would be convenient. Grant could not point to decades of vehicles crossing the strip because the photographs, aerial images, and former owner's statement all showed the opposite. The previous owner, Mrs. Collins, still lived in the county. Melissa contacted her with permission from her attorney. Mrs. Collins signed a short declaration stating that her family had never used our side yard as a driveway, never claimed a right over it, and never received permission to do so. She remembered Grant asking during the foreclosure inspection whether the side yard belonged to the house. The listing agent told him to verify the boundary. That gave Grant another warning before he ever made us an offer. We did not need Mrs. Collins to call him dishonest. Her statement established the history. No old shared driveway, no former access claim, no inherited easement, only a new renovation that worked better if our land became part of it. The old house had been empty for almost 2 years. The roof leaked, the driveway was cracked, and the single-car garage sat farther back than buyers now preferred. Grant introduced himself as a residential developer, although most of his work involved buying one house at a time, renovating it, and selling quickly. "I unlock hidden value," he told us the first week. He replaced the roof, opened the first floor, added stone veneer, and expanded the garage into 3 bays. The finished house looked expensive, because it was expensive. The garage created a problem. The original driveway approached at a sharp angle between the house and the property line. A normal car could enter, but larger vehicles had to make a tight turn. The new middle and far garage bays looked impressive in photographs and awkward in actual use. Grant's first approach was reasonable. He came to our kitchen with a sketch and offered to buy a strip of land. The proposed transfer began about 12 feet wide near the street and ran almost 90 feet toward our workshop. It included the drainage swale and passed within several feet of the larger maple. His first offer was $7,500. Naomi asked whether the amount included redesigning the drainage and moving the utility access. Grant said those details could be handled later. I asked why he needed the strip. "To create a proper motor court," he said. "It will improve the whole street." "We are not selling," I told him. He increased the offer to $12,000. We still declined. The drainage system mattered more than he understood, and we did not want a permanent driveway carrying the next owner's vehicles beside our workshop. Grant leaned back in his chair. "It is grass, Owen. It is our grass. You barely use it. We use the drainage every time it rains. That can be engineered. On your property," he rolled up the sketch, "you may want to think about whether a strip worth a few $1,000s is worth making a major project difficult." We thought about it. He left without finishing his coffee. 2 weeks later, I saw red paint on the lawn. The line curved from Grant's existing driveway into our side yard and toward the new garage. Wooden forms had not been installed, but the route was obvious. I emailed Grant that afternoon. The message said, "The proposed driveway alignment appears to cross the boundary between our parcels. Naomi and I grant no permission to grade, pave, install drainage, store materials, or enter our land. Please obtain a licensed boundary survey before beginning work near the line." Grant replied, "The driveway replacement is permitted and remains within my property. Please stop interfering with my contractors." That response did not resolve anything. The next day, Naomi called Melissa Chen, a real estate attorney recommended by a colleague. Melissa reviewed our deed, the subdivision plat, an older mortgage location survey, Grant's sketch, and the photographs of the red paint. She warned us that the older survey was not detailed enough to settle a construction dispute. "You need a current boundary survey," she said. She referred us to Elena Ruiz, a licensed professional land surveyor. Elena could review the records immediately, but her next field opening was the following Thursday. Melissa did not wait for the fieldwork. She sent Grant and his renovation company a formal notice stating that the boundary was disputed, no permission had been granted, and permanent work should not proceed until a licensed survey established the line. She copied Grant's general contractor and the county driveway permit office. The county responded with the permit history. Grant's first application showed a new curved driveway extending close to the western parcel line. A reviewer had written, "Boundary proximity. Provide license survey or revise improvement to verified existing footprint." Grant later submitted a shorter drawing labeling the project, "Replace and resurface existing driveway." The county issued a permit based on that description. But the curved section across our lawn had never been an existing driveway. Melissa sent the county photographs showing the new alignment and asked for an inspection before concrete placement. A permit technician replied that the permit did not authorize work outside Grant's parcel, but the county could not establish the private boundary from a tax map. An inspector would verify whether the work matched the approved description when construction began. That was a reasonable answer. The county could enforce its permit. A licensed surveyor had to establish the private line. Grant knew both reviews were pending. Melissa also advised us to avoid creating our own boundary problem. The orange stakes I had placed were warnings, not legal monuments. Once Elena accepted the survey job, we stopped moving or adding markers. We did not paint a line, string a chain, or place objects where Grant could accuse us of obstructing an established driveway. Elena reviewed the subdivision plat before her field visit. The record dimensions strongly suggested our concern was valid, but she refused to give us a final opinion without measurements on the ground. "Paper tells me what to look for," she said. "Field evidence tells me whether it fits." She requested copies of both deeds, the original subdivision map, road right-of-way information, and any prior surveys referenced in the title files. Grant did not provide his documents voluntarily, but most of the recorded information was public. The older mortgage location survey we possessed showed the house and workshop but carried a disclaimer that it was not intended for construction or fence placement. That distinction strengthened the realism of the dispute. We did not pretend an approximate closing sketch was enough. Grant's architect had used a county geographic information system line over an aerial photograph. Those lines were useful for general planning and tax administration. They could be several feet away from a surveyed boundary. Grant repeatedly called the county image an official map. Melissa corrected him in writing. The county's online parcel display is not a conveyance, monument record, or licensed boundary survey. Reliance on that display does not authorize construction on adjoining land. The contractor's office acknowledged receiving Melissa's first notice. Its project coordinator asked Grant to supply either a current survey or written confirmation that the proposed work remained within his parcel. Grant sent the written confirmation. He did not send a survey. That paper trail explained why the contractor initially mobilized and why responsibility later shifted back toward Grant. The county inspector's correction notice also had a specific purpose. It did not declare that Naomi and I owned the disputed strip. The county was not adjudicating title. It said the field work no longer matched a permit issued for replacement within an existing footprint, and the proximity dispute had to be resolved before permanent placement. Grant could have paused for 4 days. Elena's crew was already scheduled. Instead, he treated the delay as a threat to his appraisal and listing calendar. The appraisal inspection was booked for the following Monday. The listing photographer was scheduled Tuesday. If the concrete was not finished before those appointments, the house would appear to have an incomplete driveway and an unresolved construction issue. Grant's schedule did not create the boundary violation. It explained why he chose speed over verification. He also knew when Elena was scheduled to arrive, because Melissa's notice identified the survey date and asked him to preserve the site until then. 3 days before the appointment, a concrete crew delivered forms. Naomi called Melissa. Melissa sent another written demand and contacted the contractor directly. The contractor's office said the owner had provided written authorization and represented that all work was inside his parcel. I walked next door and spoke with Grant. "Do not pour until the survey is finished. The county approved the job." "The county told you to verify the boundary. The revised plan was accepted because you called it replacement work. It replaces a driveway, not on our lawn." Grant stepped closer. You are trying to use paperwork to force me to pay an absurd price for ground you do not need. We are not selling at any price. His expression changed. That was the moment the disagreement stopped being a negotiation. If you choose to make this expensive, he said, do not expect me to protect you from the result. The following morning, Naomi photographed workers removing a section of temporary construction fence between the lots. They installed forms along the red paint and excavated the swale for a catch basin. She called county inspection. Inspector Thomas Reed arrived that afternoon. No concrete had been poured yet. Grant showed him the permit and claimed the new curve remained inside his property. Thomas compared the work with the revised permit sketch. This is more than resurfacing, he said. Grant called it a field adjustment. Thomas issued a correction notice requiring Grant to stop before concrete placement and provide either a licensed survey or a revised plan demonstrating the work remained inside his boundary. The notice was posted on the permit board. Melissa received a copy. So did the contractor's office. Grant removed the forms from the most obvious section that evening. For one day, it appeared the system had worked. Then I left for a medical appointment on Friday morning. Naomi drove separately to help our daughter with a school event. When I returned less than 2 hours later, the concrete pump was operating. Whether Grant had planned around our absence or simply used the first open window, he had chosen to pour before Elena's survey and after the county correction notice. The red permit tag was no longer on the board. The concrete foreman, Mason Pike, later said Grant had shown him an email claiming the county issue was resolved and a signed direction accepting responsibility for the location. The contractor had also received a text stating, "Property strip settled with neighbor. Pour to owner's field marks." That statement was false. When I confronted the crew, Mason paused the pump. Concrete already filled most of the curved section. Material remained in the hose and truck. Mason told the workers to stop discharging while he called his office. Grant ordered him to continue. Mason refused to place additional concrete until the county arrived, but the crew had to spread and finish what was already on the ground, so it would not harden in an unsafe pile around the forms. That distinction mattered. The contractor did not ignore a clear dispute and pour for hours. Grant had rushed the work under a false representation, and by the time the truth reached the foreman, most of the encroaching section was physically in place. Naomi arrived and called Melissa. I called county inspection and the police non-emergency number. Thomas returned with another inspector. He photographed the missing correction notice, the expanded driveway footprint, and the new catch basin. He issued an immediate stop work order covering the driveway, retaining wall, drainage, and final inspection. The county could not yet say exactly where the property line lay. It could say Grant had changed the scope, poured after a correction notice, and failed to provide the required boundary verification. 2 police officers arrived because Grant had reported that I was harassing the crew. I showed them Melissa's notices, the county correction, and the stop work order. Grant showed them his building permit. One officer said what mattered. A permit allows work that complies with the permit. It does not transfer land. The officers did not decide title. They documented the dispute, confirmed I had not damaged equipment or threatened workers, and advised everyone to avoid confrontation. Grant demanded that I be ordered away from the driveway. The officer looked at the grass beneath my feet. We do not have a survey establishing whose parcel this exact spot is on. The county has stopped the work. Let the surveyor and attorneys handle the rest. No one was arrested. No one needed to be. By late afternoon, the concrete had been finished only to the extent necessary to leave the material already placed in a stable condition. The driveway curved toward Grant's garage. A low retaining wall foundation ran along one side. The catch basin sat near the center of our drainage swale. It looked like a completed improvement from the street. The county tags said otherwise. Elena moved another appointment and came the next morning. Her crew located the subdivision monuments near the road and rear property corners. They checked the recorded bearings, distances, and adjoining deeds. The roadside iron pin was where the plat placed it. The rear monument had not been moved. Elena ran the boundary between them and checked the result from 2 independent control points. Then, she set bright pink witness stakes. The first stake landed 5 feet inside the new concrete. The second stood near the center of the curved driveway. Farther back, the line passed through the retaining wall footing. The catch basin and part of the underground drainage pipe sat completely on our parcel. Grant watched from his porch. "That line cannot be right," he said. Elena checked her field controller. "The measurements close within tolerance. My architect used the county map. A county tax map is not a boundary survey. The old monument could be wrong. We verified it against the plat, adjoining corners, and record distances." Grant pointed at the concrete. "The driveway is already there." Elena looked at him. "Concrete does not move a property line." Her certified survey arrived 4 days later. At the widest point, the driveway extended 11 feet 8 inches onto our land. 846 square feet of concrete crossed the boundary. The retaining wall footing overlapped by nearly 6 feet. The catch basin, a section of drainage pipe, and the outlet route were on our parcel. The drainage issue made the encroachment material even apart from access. Grant's roof leaders and driveway runoff fed into the new catch basin. The pipe discharged toward our swale. If it clogged, overflow would collect near the workshop foundation. If Grant's future owner maintained or replaced the system, that owner would need continued access to our land. This was not a decorative edge that could be ignored. The survey also documented elevation and drainage conditions because the encroachment involved more than horizontal position. Elena's field crew shot grades along the swale, the workshop slab, the new driveway edge, and the catch basin. Before construction, the swale carried water south, with a consistent shallow fall. Grant's new retaining wall foundation narrowed the channel. The catch basin intercepted runoff from his roof and motor court, but the outlet pipe crossed our parcel before reaching the swale. The engineer Melissa hired later explained 2 risks. First, the system required someone to enter our property for cleaning, repair, or replacement. Without an easement, Grant could not promise a buyer permanent maintenance access. Second, if leaves, ice, or sediment blocked the catch basin, water would overtop the driveway edge toward our workshop. The new grading raised part of the surface several inches above the old lawn. That made the encroachment material to a title insurer and lender. A title company might sometimes accept a minor fence overlap or landscaping edge as an exception. This was the turning path into a 3-car garage, a retaining structure, and an active stormwater system. Removing our land from the usable area changed how vehicles entered the garage. Removing maintenance access changed whether the drainage system could be operated as designed. The appraisal had valued the property as though all of those features belonged to the house. They did not. Elena included a table in the survey report listing each encroaching component: driveway slab, retaining wall footing, catch basin, underground pipe, grading transition, temporary construction fence. The report did not use angry language. It gave dimensions, bearings, photographs, and references to the recorded monuments. That neutrality made it harder for Grant to dismiss the result as a neighbor's opinion. When his second surveyor reached the same conclusion, the factual dispute narrowed almost completely. The remaining question was not where the line stood. It was whether we would sell or grant a right across it. Our answer remained no. The driveway depended on a drainage system installed on another parcel. Melissa sent Grant, his attorney, his contractor, and his listing broker a formal notice of encroachment with the certified survey attached. The notice demanded no use of the encroaching area, no further construction, preservation of all plans, messages, permits, and contractor instructions, removal or written cure of the concrete, retaining wall and drainage, disclosure of the dispute to any buyer, lender, appraiser, title company, or insurer involved in a sale. Grant's attorney replied that the overlap was disputed and de minimis. Melissa asked whether Grant would agree not to use the encroaching portion until the dispute was resolved. He refused. 2 nights later, Grant came to our front door with a proposed easement. He offered $20,000. The document gave his property permanent use of the driveway, retaining wall, catch basin, and drainage pipe. It required us to release all damage claims and allowed future owners and contractors to enter our land for maintenance. Naomi read it and placed it back on the table. "You are asking us to turn unauthorized construction into a permanent right. I am offering more than the land is worth. We are not selling." Grant looked at me. "You are going to spend half that amount proving a line nobody cared about until now. We cared before you poured." He increased the offer to $35,000. We still declined. The reason remained the same. The driveway would permanently change our drainage, utility access, workshop use, and relationship with every future owner next door. Grant wanted to solve his sale problem by transferring the burden to us. We wanted the construction moved onto his parcel. Grant listed the house the following week for $1.149 million. The photographs emphasized the 3-car garage, curved driveway, stone retaining wall, and professionally engineered motor court. The listing did not mention the county stop work order, the certified survey, the encroachment notice, or the drainage system on our land. Grant's listing broker, Allison Reed, received Melissa's notice because her name appeared on the public listing. Allison did not ignore it. She contacted her brokerage counsel and asked Grant for an updated property disclosure. Grant marked that he knew of no unresolved boundary dispute and no encroachment affecting the property. He added a note: neighbor has raised an unsupported objection to permitted driveway work. Seller disputes claim. Allison forwarded the survey and disclosure to the transaction's title company after Grant accepted an offer. The buyers were Rachel and Ben Carter. They liked the house, the garage, and the ability to turn 2 vehicles without backing into the street. Their appraisal treated the motor court and garage access as completed features of the property. They did not know the driveway crossed our land when they made the offer. Rachel and Ben had made their offer partly because of the garage. Ben restored motorcycles as a hobby. He planned to use the 3rd bay as a work area and liked that a trailer could turn through the motor court without backing across the street. Rachel worked from home and wanted a safe place for their daughter to ride a bicycle away from traffic. The driveway was not a minor landscaping feature to them. It was part of why the house worked for their family. Their home inspector had noted the fresh concrete and recommended obtaining permits and drainage documentation. Grant supplied the driveway permit and represented the final inspection as pending, only because landscaping remained incomplete. He did not provide the county correction notice or stop work order. The appraisal photographs showed the entire curve and described it as a completed private drive. The appraiser had no reason to assume a section crossed the neighboring parcel because no survey was included in the listing package at that stage. Allison, the listing broker, became concerned as soon as Melissa's notice arrived. She told Grant the dispute had to be disclosed and sent the survey to brokerage counsel. Grant insisted the claim was baseless and demanded that the listing continue without warning language. Allison refused to remove the disclosure reference from her file. She also advised the buyer's agent that a boundary document was under review without characterizing the outcome. This protected the buyers and made the broker's conduct believable. Allison had relied on Grant's original statements. Once she received contrary professional evidence, she did not help conceal it. The title company's review happened late because the certified survey was completed after the buyers were already under contract. The transaction did not require a new survey under every possible condition, but the written encroachment notice made one necessary. When Allison forwarded Elena's report, the underwriter needed time to compare it with the deed, plat, appraisal, and lender requirements. Friday's hold was not a surprise document appearing from nowhere at the closing table. It was the result of a final review that had accelerated during the last week of the transaction. Grant knew the issue was moving through title. He still posted closing week photographs because he believed pressure from buyers, agents, and deadlines would push us toward an easement. He was using the same strategy he had used with the concrete. Finish enough steps and make reversal look more expensive than surrender. The Monday meeting exposed the limit of that strategy. Title and lending professionals could not replace a missing property right with urgency. The closing date was set for 3 weeks later. The title company ordered the usual records and received Elena's certified survey from Allison's brokerage counsel. The underwriter reviewed it before closing. That is how the problem reached the transaction. Melissa did not secretly obtain private buyer documents. The listing broker, once placed on notice, sent the material through the proper closing channel. The title underwriter issued a proposed exception for the encroaching driveway and required a cure before it would provide the expected owners and lenders coverage. Grant argued that the survey was wrong. His attorney asked for a boundary line agreement. Melissa declined because the proposed agreement would effectively give Grant the same permanent right we had already rejected. Grant commissioned a second surveyor. That surveyor reviewed Elena's work, found the same monuments, and reached nearly the same line. The difference between the 2 surveys was less than 2 inches. The concrete still crossed by more than 11 feet. Grant's argument shifted again. He said the encroachment was obvious and harmless. The title underwriter did not agree. The lender's appraisal assumed that the driveway, garage access, retaining wall, and drainage belonged to the property being purchased. Now, the driveway's functional turning area depended on land outside the sale. The buyer could not receive clear insured rights to use or maintain that area. The lender could not treat the appraised motor court as collateral without a recorded easement or physical cure. On the Friday before the scheduled Monday signing, the underwriter placed the file on hold. Grant insisted the matter could be resolved through a statement at closing. The title officer, Rebecca Sloan, scheduled a Monday morning resolution meeting before anyone signed final documents. Grant, his attorney, Allison, Rachel, Ben, and the buyer's attorney attended. Rebecca placed both certified surveys on the table. The boundary line passed through the driveway, retaining wall, and catch basin. She explained, the title company would not insure the claimed motor court access as part of Grant's parcel. The lender would not fund based on an appraisal that included improvements and access rights the seller did not own. The transaction could proceed only after a recorded easement, a boundary adjustment, or physical removal followed by an updated survey and appraisal. Grant said we had verbally approved the driveway. There was no written agreement. There was no deed. There was no easement. There was no payment. Instead, the file contained our written refusal and Melissa's notice. Rachel asked when Grant first learned of the objection. Grant said the matter became serious only after the survey. Allison's counsel had included the original emails and certified notices in the title package. Rebecca placed the first email on the table. It predated the concrete pour. Ben read the county correction notice next. "You poured after this?" he asked. Grant called it an administrative misunderstanding. Rachel pointed to his disclosure. "You checked no known encroachment after receiving the survey." Grant said he disputed the survey. "Both surveyors put the line through the driveway," Ben replied. The lender's loan officer joined by video. He confirmed that funding remained suspended until the title and appraisal conditions were cured. No one had signed the final closing documents. No deed had transferred. No money had funded. The buyers did not receive keys. Rachel and Ben asked for time with their attorney. They left the title office without completing the sale. That afternoon, Melissa called us. "The lender has suspended funding," Naomi asked the first question. "What happens to the buyer's deposit?" "Their contract includes a title contingency," Melissa said. "Their attorney expects it to be returned if the defect is not cured within the deadline." Grant's attorney sent Melissa a demand that evening, accusing us of tortious interference. Melissa responded with the timeline. Grant offered to buy the land. We declined. We warned him before construction. The county required boundary verification. The county issued a correction notice. Grant poured anyway. A licensed survey established encroachment. We notified the seller and broker truthfully. The broker sent the survey to title. The underwriter and lender made their own decisions. Melissa ended with one question. "Please identify the false statement made by Owen or Naomi Barrett." Grant's attorney did not identify one. Rachel and Ben terminated the contract under the title provision and recovered their deposit. They were disappointed, but they were not trapped in a house whose main driveway depended on a neighbor's land. Grant blamed the contractor. Mason Pike contacted Melissa to protect his company. He produced the work order, Grant's written direction, and the text message stating the strip had been settled with us. Mason admitted his office should have verified the county correction before mobilizing. He also explained why the crew had finished the concrete already discharged after I objected. Stopping the pump prevented more placement. Screeding the material already on the ground prevented an unstable mass from hardening around forms, utilities, and the street edge. The contractor's mistake was relying on Grant's representation. Grant's mistake was making it after repeated notice. The county permit file supported the same timeline. The original curve design had been held for a survey. The replacement application called the work resurfacing. The field correction prohibited concrete placement until boundary verification. The final inspection had never been approved. Grant threatened to sue. Melissa prepared our complaint first. It sought a declaration of the boundary, an injunction requiring removal of the encroachment, restoration of the drainage swale, repair of soil and landscaping, compensation for professional fees and documented damage. No claim asked for Grant's house. No claim asked for a share of his sale. We wanted our parcel restored. The parties attended mediation before the complaint was filed. Grant offered $50,000 for a permanent easement. His lawyer described removal as wasteful. Melissa asked whether the offer included future maintenance access, drainage liability, utility conflicts, tree root damage, and the effect on our workshop. Grant said those concerns could be managed in the easement. Naomi answered, "They can also be managed by moving the driveway onto his land." Grant looked at me. "You care more about winning than the value of the strip. I care about not giving every future owner a permanent driveway and drainage system beside our workshop. You cost me a buyer. You poured after the county told you to verify the boundary." He called removal vindictive. I answered, "Revenge would mean taking something of yours. We are asking you to remove what you placed on ours." The first mediation ended without agreement. Grant relisted the house with the dispute disclosed. No serious buyer wanted to proceed without a cure. His carrying costs continued. The renovation loan accrued interest. Insurance questions remained. His broker told him the listing could not be marketed as having a clear motor court, while the driveway crossed our parcel. His own attorney advised that a prescriptive easement claim had almost no factual support. There had never been a historic driveway over the strip. Grant had owned the property only a few months. The former owners had not used our side yard for access. His written offers to buy an easement showed he understood no permanent right already existed. After the buyers terminated, Grant tried one additional approach. He asked the county to approve a narrower driveway design while leaving the catch basin and retaining footing in place under a maintenance agreement. The county told him it could review construction only after the private property issue was resolved. Melissa reviewed the proposed maintenance agreement. It allowed Grant and every future owner to enter our side yard with contractors, excavation equipment, and drainage vehicles whenever they considered service necessary. It also placed part of the flooding risk on us if vegetation from our property entered the catch basin. Naomi rejected it immediately. Grant called that unreasonable. The proposal showed why the dispute could not be solved by drawing a line around the visible concrete. The structure created continuing obligations. A future owner might need to excavate our swale. A future lender would expect maintenance rights. A future buyer could argue that access was essential because the system had existed for years. The clean solution was to move every functional component onto Grant's parcel before a new owner inherited the problem. The settlement included a construction sequence to prevent further drainage damage. First, the engineer designed the new outlet. Second, the contractor installed the replacement system on Grant's land. Third, temporary controls redirected water during demolition. Only then did the crew remove the encroaching catch basin and pipe. The swale was regraded last. Elena and the engineer inspected the work before sod was placed. Those details made restoration slower than cutting one strip of concrete, but they prevented a second dispute over whether the cure had made our property worse. Grant also had to provide notice to Rachel and Ben's attorney that the title defect had been corrected, even though they were no longer buying the house. That clause did not require them to return. It closed the information loop for people who had spent money relying on the original disclosure. Their inspection and appraisal expenses were resolved through their contract and negotiations with Grant. Naomi and I did not demand money from them or use their disappointment as leverage. The dispute stayed between the people responsible for the construction and the owners whose land had been crossed. A second mediation took place 6 weeks later. This time, Grant agreed to physical correction. The settlement required him to remove every part of the driveway and retaining wall on our property, relocate the catch basin and drainage pipe, submit a revised drainage design prepared by a licensed engineer, restore the swale, soil, grass, and damaged maple root zone, pay our survey costs, reimburse a substantial portion of our legal fees, acknowledge in writing that no easement, license, or access right burdened our parcel, provide the corrected survey to any future buyer. The release would not become final until Elena confirmed that the redesigned work remained inside Grant's boundary. The concrete removal began on a cold Thursday morning. The crew marked Elena's certified line across the driveway. A concrete saw followed it. The blade cut through the curved motor court Grant had built to appear permanent. Gray dust rose around the pink witness stakes. An excavator lifted the encroaching slabs piece by piece. The retaining wall footing came out next. Workers removed the catch basin and dug up the drainage pipe crossing our parcel. A licensed engineer redesigned the system so Grant's roof and driveway discharged to an approved outlet on his own land. The new driveway remained functional. It was narrower. Vehicles had to approach the garage more carefully. The house no longer had the sweeping motor court Grant had advertised. It still had 3 garage bays and a legal driveway entirely on its own parcel. Grant watched part of the removal from beside his SUV. "You happy now?" he asked. "No. You stopped $1 million sale over 11 feet of grass. You stopped it when you poured after being warned." He looked toward the saw. "This is waste. The county gave you time to verify the line before concrete." He did not answer. Mason supervised the removal because his insurer and Grant's settlement had allocated part of the correction work to the contractor. He apologized to Naomi and me. "I should have confirmed the stop notice with the county," he said. "Yes," Naomi replied. He nodded. There was no need to humiliate him further. He had admitted the mistake, provided the records, and helped repair it. After the drainage was rebuilt, the larger maple received an arborist inspection. The tree had lost some feeder roots during excavation but remained stable. The second maple had superficial bark damage from equipment and recovered after treatment. No trees had been secretly destroyed. The damage was specific, documented, and repaired. Elena returned after the new concrete cured. She located the same monuments and checked the redesigned driveway. Its nearest edge stayed 18 inches inside Grant's boundary. The retaining wall and drainage remained on his parcel. She issued a final survey showing no encroachment. I stood beside the new line. "Every inch his?" I asked. "Every inch," she said. Grant's house returned to the market at a lower price. The listing no longer called the driveway a grand motor court. It described a newly engineered private drive and included the updated survey in the transaction documents. A couple named Alex and Priya Shah bought the house several months later. The corrected sale happened without ceremony. There was no public auction, no courtroom crowd, and no dramatic collapse for Grant. He accepted a lower offer, paid the remaining renovation bills, and moved on to another project in a different part of the county. I heard that he began ordering boundary surveys earlier on later renovations. I could not verify why. The important part was what happened on our street. The Shahs received the updated survey before signing their contract. Their lender and title company insured a driveway located entirely on the purchased parcel. The appraisal described the garage access that physically existed after redesign, not the larger motor court that depended on our land. The documents and ground finally matched. For several months, the concrete cut line remained visible where the old motor court had been narrowed. Grant had considered that line ugly. I saw it differently. It showed the exact place where assumption ended and ownership began. Grass eventually covered the restored side. The maple canopy filled in above it. Most people driving past would never know a title dispute had stopped $1 million sale there. That was fine. The goal was not to preserve a public scar. The goal was to preserve the boundary. Before replacing the old fence between our properties, Alex knocked on our door with a copy of the survey. "We want to keep the fence entirely on our side," he said. "Would you mind walking the line with us before the contractor starts?" That conversation lasted 10 minutes. It prevented the kind of dispute Grant had spent months creating. Naomi and I offered to share the cost of a simple fence because it benefited both properties. The Shahs did not demand use of our land. They did not call the strip useless. They treated the boundary as the place where their rights ended and ours began. The first heavy storm after the repair arrived in spring. Water followed the restored swale past the workshop and into the public ditch. Nothing collected against the slab. No runoff crossed from Grant's former property improvements. Naomi and I stood under the back overhang and watched the water move. The strip still looked like grass. That did not make it worthless. It was doing exactly what we had said it did from the beginning. I placed Elena's final survey, the settlement, and the photographs in a fire-resistant file cabinet in the workshop, not because we hated our neighbors, because owners change, memories change, marketing descriptions change. The recorded line should not depend on whoever tells the most confident story. Grant had looked at our old workshop and ordinary yard and decided we would not spend the time or money to defend them. He saw finished concrete as leverage. He believed the cost of removing it would make surrender seem practical. The survey changed that calculation. It did not take his house. It did not give us part of his property. It did not prevent a future sale. It required him to sell only the land and improvements he actually owned. A building permit did not transfer the strip. A contractor's formwork did not move the monuments. A polished listing did not create an easement. And concrete did not erase the deed. Grant crossed a line he had been shown before the poor. The survey did not create that line. It simply made the line impossible to ignore.